A lot of news out there, and obviously last Friday, in fact, we talked about this a little bit, that Gary Andersen announced that he is going to be sticking with the BYU football program. He told that to Hans and Scotty G, the radio station I work for, the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah. And that was some big news because a lot of people, yours truly included, thought that he would go where Jay Hill went. And Jay Hill obviously going to Michigan. There was some thought, okay, maybe Gary's going to Ann Arbor. But he announced that he's planning on sticking around BYU, and he plans on retaining the analyst role that he has held at BYU for the majority of the past 2 seasons since coming to Provo, Utah. Well, a lot of you have said, well, why isn't he moving up to the defensive coordinator spot, Jake? What's going on here? From my vantage point, I think Gary really likes the role he's in because what it is, as an analyst, you're simply focused on coaching. When you become a full-time assistant coach, you're responsible for recruiting, making recruiting visits, all of the paperwork in terms of retaining talent, convincing guys when it comes to the transfer portal, whether to go into the portal, come out of the portal. There's so much of the, I don't know, bureaucracy might not be the right term, but there's a lot of stuff in terms of off the field that you have to handle as a full-time position coach. And Gary Andersen, he's been in the rat race for a really, really long time. He did it as a position coach. He did it as a head coach at multiple stops, including Utah State, Wisconsin, Oregon State. And I think that the way that he operates right now is Gary, as he told the Hans and Scotty G, he wants to coach. He wants to coach players, help the next generation of players, but he also wants to help coaches as well. Well, as it stands, BYU is going to be naming a new defensive coordinator at some point in the relatively near future, and all eyes right now are on the name Kelly Poppinga, who looks like he is the odds-on favorite to become that. And the thing with Kelly is, in his coaching career, Kelly has been a special teams coordinator. He's been a linebackers coach. He's been an edges coach. He's been a defensive ends coach, obviously most recently at BYU. And the only time he's been a defensive coordinator was as a co-defensive coordinator under Bronco Mendenhall, working alongside Nick Howell when they were out at Virginia. I believe it was for 2 seasons, if I recall correctly, that Kelly carried that title. As I understand it, and I could be wrong about this, but I don't believe that Kelly at any point had the decision-making, play-calling power when it came to that position he had at Virginia. Well, if he is going to be BYU's defensive coordinator, who better to be right there, right next to him in the booth, or whether he's on the field or regardless, is to have a guy like Gary Andersen in his analyst role that you can get ideas from and talk strategy with. Gary knows the defense that BYU is implementing. They're not going to wholesale change the defense that Jay Hill spent the last 3 seasons implementing at BYU. It's the defense, quite frankly, that Kalani Sitake has wanted at BYU the entire time he's been there. And they had fits and starts in terms of what happened under the previous regime of defensive coaches, but they're going to keep this thing rolling. And Gary, in his role, as he also told the Hans and Scotty G, it's not going to be focused particularly on defensive tackles this year, which was his specialty, is what he was coaching up last year. He was on the field. He's working with defensive tackles, talking through how to beat guys on double teams and that type of stuff. He was in the nitty-gritty right there on the grass working with those D tackles. He says he's going to have a more multifaceted role this year, and I think that's exactly what BYU needs for him to be. Because yes, let's say it is Kelly Poppinga for the first time as a defensive coordinator having play calling responsibilities. Well, I think he has an understanding of what this defense entails, and obviously he'll have some ideas of how he can tweak it a little bit. But Gary Andersen can be right there with him saying, hey, look at this, consider that, what about this? And his ability to, I think, to bebop around and work with multiple groups of guys, find ways to impact the BYU football program. That's exactly, I think, a tailor-made fit for what Gary is at this point in his career. If what he has said is true, he wants to coach the next generation of players, but also help the next generation of coaches. This is an absolutely incredible role that has been carved out for Gary, and I think he's going to absolutely thrive in it because this is what he wants to do, is he wants to just coach. He doesn't want to have to deal with the off the field stuff when it comes to recruiting. Yeah, you can leave that to a guy like Kelly Poppinga, because I can tell you, Kelly, from what I understand, talking with high school coaches and others who know him very, very well, he's one of the most dogged recruiters on BYU staff, and that includes the guys like Jay Hill, Gennaro Guilford, Aaron Roderick, Fesi Sitake. Kalani Sitake has got a really, really good stable of assistant coaches who are by and large responsible for the day-to-day recruiting of players in their set position groups, and not even beyond that. They have set areas that they recruit. Well, I think that if you have a guy like Gary Andersen, what Kelly lacks in play calling experience, you'll make up for with a guy like Gary Andersen helping him out on that side of things, while Kelly continues to kind of keep the trend going of recruiting high-level defensive talent to put into this defense and help them thrive on the field. So understand that while Gary, yeah, you're probably thinking, why isn't he moving up to the defensive coordinator role? It's because he probably doesn't want it. If he wanted it, I'm sure Kalani Sitake would have no problem saying, Gary, it's all yours, man, because Gary has the experience. He did it for Kyle Whittingham at an extremely high level. He coached defense during his head coaching tenures at each stop, and by and large, had pretty good success. And his track record speaks for itself. But if he can have a bigger impact, like I said, behind the scenes, where he's I don't want to say the puppet master, but he's kind of the man behind the curtain who's pulling all the strings, to use the Wizard of Oz expression, because, Wicked and all that stuff is in vogue right now. But that can work out, and it absolutely can impact winning for the BYU football program. So I'm here for it. I love the fact that Gary is sticking around, and he said it himself. He grew up with a Ute binky in his mouth. He wore red his entire life, played at Utah, coached at Utah, went to Utah State, wore that shade of blue, and now he's wearing BYU gear. I can tell you, just knowing what I've known over the years of Gary Andersen, it was a really, really weird look the first time I saw him trotting off the field in Provo wearing BYU gear. But from all accounts, including his own and what he said about what he's done at BYU, it's been a match made in heaven, and it looks like it could have a major impact on BYU's fortunes in 2026 and beyond, with him still right there in the thick of things, just not having to deal with, like I said, the off-the-field stuff that he doesn't want to deal with. He can be on the field, coaching his guys, helping everybody in any way, shape, or form that he possibly can, and then at the same time, helping a first-time defensive coordinator settle in at that spot. Yeah, I think this is a major, I guess retainment is probably the best term to use. To not lose Gary, it's big for Kalani Sitake and company, because he is going to be a very, very impactful individual, even if he's not front and center in next fall, next season, next week, whenever it is. Gary is going to have an outsized role for the BYU football program, and get ready for it, because the track record with Gary Andersen has been pretty good success on the football field. And I think in this role, it absolutely helps him thrive even more than he could as the defensive coordinator for BYU.